Welcome to Talk to Cisco, a live social broadcast that puts you directly in touch with Cisco leaders. Today we have Joe Hildebrand, former CTO of Jabber and now with Cisco, who's going to talk about how IM and other social communication tools have changed how we communicate, collaborate, and even how we think about our own identities. I'm Jamie Beckett, and I'll be moderating this program. First, before we begin, a note about participation. You'll see the social stream on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send us a comment or a question via Facebook or Twitter, or if you prefer, you can email us at talk2Cisco@cisco.com. So on with the show. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Jamie.
So, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work at Cisco.
Sure. So I joined Cisco a little over a year ago when Cisco acquired Jabber Inc. I'm now an architect within our collaboration software group. That's the group that does tools with WebEx brands, for example, WebEx Meeting Center and WebEx Connect, our new instant messaging system that we host for our customers.
So here's a question. So you've been talking about identity and thinking about it. The problem isn't new. How have tools like IM and social networks complicated things? Why do we need to think about it?
Yeah, this brings to mind a question one of our distinguished engineers at Cisco asked me a couple of days ago when I announced that we were doing this Q&A. His question was, what's looming about this identity crisis? What's new? Hasn't this always been a problem? And I think the answer to that is, yes, it has, but the crisis part is that we're not able to ignore it anymore. And we've always sort of striven to not talk about it in polite company. The fact that we don't know enough about who each other are or what identity even means. And so there's a sort of a polite fiction that grows up around, I know who you are, I know what your reputation is, I've gotten used to working with you, you're the same person that you were yesterday. When you've got a lot of physical interaction with people, you can use a lot of the information that you gain from being in the same room with somebody to build up that sense of identity of the other person. But when you're one or more steps removed via email or IM or Facebook or Twitter or et cetera, those social conventions don't help as much anymore. And we've been able to sort of put a layer of being able to ignore that on top of those systems to this point. But we're starting to get to the point where you have so many different relationships that doesn't work anymore. I don't know anymore who you are on the other side of a Twitter conversation, unless you happen to reference it when we're sitting down at a bar, talking about our days. So that I think is the little bit of a scary part about where we're going right now, is that we need to figure out that sort of philosophical basis of how we know who the other person is.
So how do we solve the problem? Should you have a work Facebook and a personal Facebook, a bunch of Twitter feeds?
Yeah, that's certainly one approach that some people are using, is to try and have different communities of different personal brands, let's say, for different aspects of their life. And that actually makes the problem a little worse, because the cohesive sense of who the other person is then gets fragmented. And that fragmentation makes it even more difficult to figure out how to have an authentic connection with somebody. And that's one of the things that we tend to strive for as humans, is to really connect with other people.
In case you just tuned in, this is Talk to Cisco, and we're taking your questions for former Jabber CTO Joe Hildebrand, now working for Cisco WebEx, who's been talking about the changing nature of identity. And here's another question. What used to be private is more and more public. What's it all mean, and how do we sort this?
Yeah, this is the part of the conversation where I sound like the old man screaming, "Get off my lawn!" The kids of today and their loud music. No, I think that there's a generational answer to this question. And I think that folks that didn't grow up with the pervasive sense of external, talking about everything that they're doing on their social media sites. So the folks that didn't grow up with that get very concerned and scared and perhaps rightfully so about the amount of information that they make public about themselves. I think that the people that did grow up with that sort of tool set really do have a different sense of what's public and what's private. And I'm interested to see what happens as those folks come into the workforce and when the people who are doing the hiring have a different sense of privacy than the people who are being hired. That will be an interesting conversation that will continue to build.
I should say so.
People who have a very long history of all the things that they did in high school and college still being available and still being Google searchable may be an interesting thing as you're trying to get hired, or it may be that that's just the way everybody's history is and we just get over it. I don't know what the social mores are going to be 15 years from now.
I want to remind all of you in the audience to please do send us questions. You can use Facebook or Twitter or email at talk2Cisco@cisco.com. We do have a question from Mike from Twitter. He wants to know, what was Jabber and how does it relate to what you're doing at Cisco?
That's a great question. So Jabber originally was started as an instant messaging system. The original idea was that it was going to be open source, and we had formed a company pretty early on in that milieu to sort of bring that into the corporate space and to people who wanted a more supported version of that. And as we went through that process, we ended up doing a lot of standards work, and the wire protocols that we used there ended up being standardized as XMPP, which you may have heard of separately from the word Jabber. So how does that apply to what I'm doing at Cisco? We have a couple of different places where the Jabber technologies are making it into Cisco products. The first one of which is WebEx Connect, which is a hosted IM system, and another of them is Cisco Unified Presence, which is a part of Call Manager, which is our PBX system for phones.
And here's another question from Twitter from Jeremy. How much of this will be rooted in what we do about applying assert to users in the cloud?
Well, certificates are one way of proving that somebody believes that you've got some name. And that's really all they do. How you prove to that person, the certificate authority in this case, that you are who you say you are, is kind of a weak link in the chain. And so it's the step between what we do sort of in human space, in the traditional Newtonian physics that we're used to. The table is here, I'm sitting next to it. How do we get from that into the internet space where all we have is electrons? And that transition is difficult no matter how you do it. Certificates is one of the ways that we've tried to get at that, but they haven't scaled to individual users terribly well because of the problem of proving yourself.
And here's another Twitter question. This one's from Dave. What's the next Twitter, and when will email no longer exist in the enterprise?
Peter St. Andre, who is one of the people who has been behind Jabber and XMPP for a very long time. If you do a Google search for the phrase email Delinda est, which is a sort of a gag on the war between Rome and Carthage back in the day. Peter was a classics major, so you get a little bit of that sort of thing from him. But the email is here to stay. It's unlikely that it's going to be replaced by anything in the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's just so entrenched into everything that we do. Yes, there could be a better, more secure, less spam-ridden kind of system that grows out of that, but I think it'll be at least somewhat backward compatible with what we call email today. As far as what's the next Twitter, There are a lot of cool things out there on the horizon, and one of the things that is always a constant source of fun is playing with these systems and testing out their boundaries and figuring out how they all fit together, and sometimes figuring out how they fit into the bigger picture of what we do at a large company like Cisco.